Testing, test.
You're gonna keep everybody even kill. Yeah, no kid, no. Let's see that. How about you? A lot of people here, but they're all public comment. Oh, wait. No. It makes sense to me. No. All right, boss.
Okay, we want to welcome everybody out to our Planning Commission meeting. We're going to go ahead and get started. We will begin with a Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Severing, and then I will give the reverence.
Please rise. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we are so very grateful for all of the many blessings that we have. We're grateful to be gathered together tonight to discuss the needs of our community. We ask that thou would please be with us, that we will be able to be receptive and that our minds can be open to the opinions and feelings that are expressed. Please help us to be able to make good decisions that are based on the law and be able to help those in attendance to feel that they are heard. We ask that thou would please bless those serving for our country. We are so very grateful for the freedoms and blessings that we enjoy, and we ask that thou would please help us to use those for good. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, before we get started, I need to make a small announcement. We had some technical difficulties on the agenda that was put on the website. The commission received the amended agendas, but for some reason that did not show up online. So if you look at item D, the conditional use permit request for the Torgay Flipper LLC, if anybody looked online, it was noticed as a public hearing. However, this will not be a public hearing because a public hearing was already held the last time that this came before this body. So just wanted to let you know up front, there will not be public comment during that time. And so we'll go ahead and proceed. Also, just as a reminder, if during the times that we have public comment tonight, if you can please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Morgan will have a card that you'll hold up to let you know when your time is finished. And we ask that you please have respectful decorum, no outbursts or applause. We just want to be respectful to whoever's up speaking so that we can hear everything they have to say. Thank you. Okay. So the first item we have is a consent item, approval of the minutes dated August 8th, 2024. Commissioners, have all of you had a chance to review those minutes? And did you find anything that needed to be updated? I had a couple of things, and Morgan, maybe you can clarify this with me. Does it always show the chair as voting even if we don't vote on here? Just on any of the consent or any of the items? Okay. Okay, yeah, I just think we should probably update it just to be precise because I don't vote, so, well, not unless there's a tie. And then, on page 4, under item C, paragraph that starts with Commissioner Greener. Just to clarify, it said, Commissioner Prince asked why they moved the structure to the north and can it be wherever works for better hiding behind trees? I think that needs to be changed to say to the north and can it be moved if needed? And then I think they said they moved it because it was better hidden behind the trees. That's why they had moved it. So just so that reads right. That's all I had. Okay. I will entertain a motion on the approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes dated August 8th, 2024 with the corrections that Amanda just listed.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Greener, and I'll take a second.
Second.
Which was that? Okay, second by Commissioner Whittison. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay. The next item we have is a discussion motion from it's on the Hanson Planning Group. Do we have a presentation from the staff on this at all? Okay. That's it. Is there someone here from the Hanson Group to present to us on this? No? Okay. Okay, well, in that case, I guess we bring it back to the commission for discussion on this. For those that don't know what the Hanson Group is, they are a firm that was contracted with by the city to help update our subdivision ordinance. There was some legislation passed in 2023 requiring some updates that needed to be made. So we received a packet that had, I guess, the proposed subdivision ordinance. I went through this and I have quite a few questions on it. I did reach out to our Public Works Director to see if he had had a chance to really go through it thoroughly. He said he also had some questions. When we were down at the conference for the Utah League of Cities and Towns back in April, they did a class that included some information on this and recommended that City Council, Planning Commission work together. They mentioned that there were some consultants that could be hired through the state at no charge to help us with that process. My thoughts would be that, you know, we table this until we can have a work session with the City Council as well as Public Works and the engineer to go over this and make sure it's how we want it. Because there are some things like, for instance, City Council just approved a new ordinance on fencing, and this contradicts that. And from the wording in here, it sounds like state law will supersede this, that this will supersede our ordinances as a city. And so I think we just need to make sure that it's exactly how we want it before we make any kind of recommendation on it. Those are my thoughts. What do you guys think?
Well, if we gotta live to this document, I think it'd be a good idea to get Jared and the engineer involved to make sure that we've dotted all our i's and crossed all our t's before we just blow it out.
Any other thoughts?
I agree.
I think so too. Okay, so we need to make a motion. So I was told we can table this and then we could have a work session and invite the city council to attend and Public Works and the city engineer. Is that, I'll entertain a motion if somebody wants to make a motion.
Maybe just do that for our next meeting in October.
Whatever you guys think is best. I'm not sure what we have coming up.
Yeah, at this point, it'd probably be good to table it to that meeting, and then you have something to shoot for.
Okay.
I'm gonna make a motion that we table this discussion and until the October 10th Planning Commission meeting, of which the City Council and Public Works will be invited to have a work session with us to just further discuss.
And the city engineer as well on that.
And the city engineer.
I'll second it. Okay, so I have a motion from Commissioner Greener and a second from Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay, next we have a conditional use permit request for Alicia Gillis for an accessory dwelling unit totaling 609 square feet located at 4570 West, 5100 South. Do we have a presentation from the staff?
There we go. As mentioned, we have an accessory dwelling unit, a conditional use permit application, 609 square feet. We have a height structure of 15 feet 1 inch, and the acreage on the property is 0.61 acres. Here's some conceptual drawings, some elevation of what the building will look like, along with a site plan. There's the proposed ADU on the current site. Along with that, you can see where it's located at 5100 South. One point to note, as I took a look at this, was just that we will need to make sure that that building, the detached ADU, does not extend beyond the furthest corner of the primary residential structure. We contacted the contractor on that, and they're aware of that. Just an additional note, so you can see there's a building on the far end there existing, will need to be 10 feet from that building if that adjustment is made to put it in line with the, bar rear end of that building. So those were the considerations on that one. Let me get you back over there. Sorry about that. There we are.
Got it? Okay, thanks, Malcolm. Okay, do we have, does anybody have any questions for Malcolm before we move on? All right, is there a representative here okay, this is one of the questions I have because there's a different name on the application than what is on our agenda, so.
Okay,
Okay, can you please tell us your name and if you're a Hooper resident?
so I'm not the resident, I'm the applicant. I work with the contractor. My name is Felix Guzman. I'm actually taking over for Jackson Law. He was the one that actually designed this, and he died tragically 2 weeks ago, unfortunately. So I'm taking over for his responsibilities. Do you have any questions for me?
So one of the questions that I had, and maybe, I don't know if I ask you this or if I ask Brandon, but the application is signed, the ADU application is signed by Alicia Gillis. And then when I looked it up, the property is in the name of Rosemary Smith and Alicia Gillis. Do we have to have both property owners? It doesn't matter.
No, I don't think, as long as we have somebody that's on the deed,
Okay.
making the request.
So as far as the conditional use permit request, though, that was filled out and signed by this gentleman. Wouldn't that have to be the property owner that's signing that? Because they're the ones agreeing to the terms of that.
I mean, yes.
Okay.
So I think you could have two choices. You could go ahead and improve with the condition that nothing happened until the actual property owner stops by, signs it. I think that would be reasonable for this particular one. Other ones you might have more concerns with, you may want to table, but
Okay.
I do think you would want to have the property owner actually sign it because they're agreeing to adhere to what they said.
Okay. So the total square footage on the application is 609 square feet and our ordinance allows you to go up to 960. Did you mean 609 on that for sure?
Yeah, they just wanted a smaller one. It's just 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. They didn't want anything big.
Okay, and then I think I had another question on this one. On the conditional or ADU paperwork that was filled out, I don't think that this has the same verbiage in there as what we recently approved on that as far as one of the, either the primary residence or the ADU needing to be owner occupied for the duration. Don't we have something like that that we recently approved? So I don't, when they come in, when the property owner comes in, they'll need to fill out the correct application on that as well.
Okay.
So any questions?
No, my only concern was it not being behind the primary house, and that's been addressed. So.
Yeah, well, we can change that. That's not a problem. We'll talk to the owner and let him know that that's where it needs to go.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing, so we will now open this for public comment. If there is anyone that would like to make a comment. Okay, Seeing none, we'll close that and bring it back to the commission. Any discussion?
It's good.
Okay, thank you, Sheldon. All right, I will entertain a motion from the commission on this.
Okay, help me out with some of your things here too. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit request for Alicia Gillis for an accessory dwelling unit totaling 609 square feet located at 4570 West, 5100 South, with the following conditions: the site plan be updated to a minimum distance of 10 feet between the buildings, and the ADU be pushed back behind the primary dwelling. Additionally, the application needs to be signed by the owner, and the correct ADU application needs to be signed.
Good job. And I think just to clarify, it has to be the back behind the rear edge of the
Correct.
primary residence. So. Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Greener. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Widdowson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay, next we have a conditional use permit request for Robert Edwards for an oversized structure totaling 1,826 square feet located at 4373 South, 5400 West. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Conditional use permit, as mentioned, for Robert Edwards, total square footage, 1,826. The height of the structure is 23.5 feet. It's going to be used for a house shop. Plumbing will not be installed, neither will electrical be installed. The structure will not be used for business. Here is the site plan drawn. As you can see the front of the home there with the proposed building, along with the cross-section plan there, of what the plan will include. There specifically is the proposed oversized structure. That is everything we have in terms of the application.
Okay,
And the
thanks, Matt.
23.5 feet is from grade, correct? This is from grade. And what is the size of that lot?
Half of an acre, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Malcolm. Is there a representative here for Robert Edwards? Could you please come up and just tell us your name and whether or not you're a Hooper resident?
Robert Edwards, and yes, I am a
Okay.
Hooper.
All right, thank you. So can you tell us just a little bit about what you're wanting to do and?
Just putting a shop in, a 30 by 40 building with a 14-foot on or 12-foot awning on the north side to put a trailer under, and then a 12 by 12 awning on the south side for dog run. Have a 14-foot, 12 by 14-foot garage door, 2 man doors, and 1 window.
Any questions from the commission? I thought everything looked good.
Sounds like an awesome shop you're gonna have there.
Okay, thank you.
You're gonna let Heidi put everything in there, or is it your stuff?
Okay, this is a public hearing, so we will now open this up for public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment on this item. Okay, seeing none, we'll close that and bring it back to the commission for any additional discussion.
Looks good.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit for Bob Edwards at 4373 South, 5400 West.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Severing, and is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay, now we will move on to the conditional use permit request for Torgali Hooper LLC for a group youth home drug and alcohol treatment center located at parcel number 087120003 lot 3. Okay, all right, we'll go ahead and have a presentation from staff.
As mentioned, Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center conditional use permit request from Torg Gailey Hooper LLC. You can see here's the location. There's a few items there. It looks like it got cut off. That's located there at 5100 West, and there's a development there you can note for reference. Here's the site plan, and you can see there in that far corner where the proposed placement is. I'll highlight it there, along with a blown up image of kind of what the relevant site plan to the building will look like with some landscaping. And here is a rendering of what the building would possibly look like. That's what we have here from the application.
Thank you. Any questions for Malcolm before we move on? Okay. All right, is there a representative here for the Torgaleys that can come up? Okay, do you want to come up and please just tell us your name and if you are a Hooper resident or not?
Matt Lowe, and I'm not a resident of Hooper.
Okay. Okay, and then do you have anything that you would like, I know you've been here before, but is there any additional information that you would like to present to this body?
Yeah, I think we came very prepared. I have my attorney here, and also we have Mike here, Mike Webb, who's here, basically has, I think, 3 decades of experience with rehab centers who we brought onto our team to answer a lot of your guys' questions. So we're prepared to do that.
Okay, so do you want us to just start with questions or?
I mean, yeah, so I think where we left it, we were here, I believe, in May. And so that that meeting was continued. And we explored some other alternatives with the city of alternative uses. And I think we kind of landed that this was the preferred route to take. So we're kind of back here to get this moving forward again and answer your guys' questions. So.
Okay. Okay, where this is not a public hearing, I will bring it back to the commission then for any questions that you would like to ask Mr. Lowe.
Yeah, and I'll have Mike come up as well.
Okay.
And then if there are any legal questions, I have my attorney Jesse Davis here as well. But
Okay.
Mike is probably the most prepared on all of the rehab related questions. So just let us know who you feel like you would want to answer the questions.
Okay.
So,
And Mike, just for the record, you're not a Hooper resident either, correct? Okay. We're not asking addresses publicly anymore, but we just need to ask whether or not you live in Hooper. So, and then, I'm sorry, what was your attorney's name? Just so I can write that down.
Jesse Davis.
Jesse Davis. Thank you. Okay, commissioners.
We're gonna share the mic. Please just speak into it.
So back in May, when they presented this the first time, one of the questions we had was what type of license they were applying for. And to my knowledge, we still don't have that, whether it's child, adult. I mean, there's 3 or 4 different types of licenses
Oh, yeah,
that
so-
the
So let me
department.
add that was one question I was hoping to either clarify tonight, or I don't even care if you send it in to clarify it. So I did get from Mr. Jones, just a copy of the license. You know, generally they file with the state. And I was looking it over. It's not obviously filled out or anything. But there's on the second page, there's license categories. There's maybe 10 different categories. I mean, it covers like adult daycare, residential treatment, outpatient treatment, outdoor youth, residential sport. There's a whole bunch of them. And then my understanding is there are categorical rules. You can click as many as you want to, whatever you're doing. And then there's, my understanding, categorical rules the state imposes related to each license category. And then under that, there's a section called specialized services requested. And so it talks about, like, if it's, for example, a temporary youth homeless shelter or a youth residential facility or a mental health, or there's about 7 other ones there. And so that, I was hoping we could get some clarification on either today or later. If you want to send that in, that's fine. Reason being is I think it's important for us to understand what types of licenses or license you're applying for, because we really want to understand what that is, because then we can check the rules, but also maybe talk to the Department of Human Services and kind of ask them, okay, what do you do to monitor those types of licenses? What do you do rule wise to impose on applicants? If that makes sense, that just helps us kind of fully investigate what you're doing. And you may not be ready to like say right now, okay, it's these 4 things or anything, but that I think would be quite helpful. If you can today, great. If not, just kind of send that to me and I can check into that if that makes sense.
Definitely. Do you want to talk on that?
Sure, be glad to. So, you know, I don't have that form in front of me,
Okay,
but
you can have this too, if it helps you to kind of see what I'm saying, not just imagining what I'm talking about, so.
so this would be an adolescent residential addiction treatment center. It would be specifically the state, what they do is they have started the process of getting this license. The application obviously is the first step, but there are quite a few other steps. And as building then would, as you approve, if you approve the building and approve for them to come into your community, as they obviously created the building and had this, started creating the whole process of the treatment center and building it. On the back end, they do a lot of stuff with the state. They do a lot of security. They look at every aspect. And the state has a huge list that they put people through. And the state of Utah, actually, just so you know, because they work in a lot of other states, state of Utah is one of the best because they really, they've had licensure for many years and they've got it down to a science. And so part of this application is making sure that all those areas are covered. And then what they will do is before they open, they would come in and they would literally do a full walkthrough of about 2 to 3 days. It's not like one day they come in and go through the whole process. And if they see anything that isn't agreed upon the application process, they literally will say, sorry, we're not going to grant you this opportunity to continue this. So the one thing you need to understand, the state of Utah, they really do have this. They're very controlled in it. And so you have all these elements you have to have completed. So it would hopefully make you guys feel better about it before the center could even open. After the 3-day overview, they then would say, okay, we are going to grant you a temporary licensure. And the license is for the adolescents, I think it's 3 months. And in 3 months, we'll come back and check and see how you're doing. And if things are great, which we think they will be, we'll actually then grant you a full license. So that's the way the state of Utah does that. And you need to be assured they do a really good job on all the issues, the security from A to Z, the staff, all the staff have to have a specific background check. And it's not just like a little background check. It's actually like a very intense background check because we have to make sure we have the right staff there, that there's no history as well. You know, our staffs would be the biggest issue because they're the ones that are going to be there running the center on a daily basis. So anyway, it's A through Z is what they take you through. And obviously they can't do anything about the licensure yet because structure's not built. They haven't started that whole process, but they've at least started looking at the application, taking a look at it and know exactly what their next steps would be as they proceed forward.
I thought of one question when you were mentioning the ages. On that application, I think one of the first things on that second page is you got to click like this is an adult facility or it's a youth like 17 and under. So would it be that with like 17 and under?
Yes,
Okay.
it would be. Yeah. So.
Why did you choose a youth instead of an adult?
You know, it really market dynamics. We looked at the opportunity. We felt like there was a greater need. There's also been a recent one that was closed in the Salt Lake area that kind of opening up some more market opportunity. And we feel like it's a better need is being met by that. Mike, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. So the other thing here in the state of Utah, the average child that has drug problems starts out at the age of 12. If you really have a time, go down to the juvenile court and see who they're prosecuting. It'll blow you away. You have 12-year-olds that are doing drive-bys. You have 12-year-olds that are taking cars. They get younger and younger. One of the judges is my neighbor, and she just can't believe it. So here's
Sorry,
the other.
we were told last time that this was primarily for out-of-state student children.
It could be both because you have to have a license in that way. If other states are the same as well, A lot of it'd be the regional, it'd be the Intermountain states. But there's such a need for adolescents to get help. And the temporary help that they were receive has helped so many kids avoid actually long-term legal problems, long-term addiction problems, long-term medical programs. So, and really the state of Utah is really lacking in really good adolescent care. So really, if you spend a lot of time with your junior high kids and your early high school kids, I think you'd really be amazed what's going on with some of these kids. And how quickly, due to the internet and everything that's going on, they get involved in stuff and they hide it. They hide it from their parents, they hide it from everybody. And until something comes out, and having a place like this, what an opportunity for the community to actually give back to the community and the fact of helping people that have these issues. The other issue with this would be the mental health issues. Oftentimes there's depression, anxiety that actually kind of starts that whole process off as well. So yeah, I would tell you, this is something that's very needed in the state of Utah, and it would be a great asset to this community.
So that brings up another question. Sorry, I wasn't on the last planning commission if I ask you tons. So why do a drug and alcohol treatment center after the fact they went downhill? Why not set up something to catch them before? Because I do have a teen and I have went and looked for help and I hit wall after wall. So why not do something that stops it before it gets to this point rather than wait till we get to that point? Is that because the market's not there?
Well, actually, I think I understand what you're saying. Actually, I think some of those kids will be those kids that are just starting to get into it. And there's other problems going on with depression and whatever. I think they'll take care of and take care of some of those kids as well. Because you're right, adolescent care is pretty limited in Utah. And I know there's a lot of walls and stuff. So reality, this would be a situation where it'd be offer opportunity to really help local kids, but also national kids as they're going through some of these changes, and give the community another resource for some help.
Okay, and then my next question is, you have a privacy fence. You say a 6-foot privacy fence. So is that just going on the back and the sides? And is that going to be like a high vinyl fence? Is that a chain link fence? And what are we going to do about the front of it?
On our drawings, we showed a perimeter fence, and I think it was anticipated we would do a vinyl fence there. And we talked about last time, if it was a condition you guys wanted to impose, we're fine putting a gate on the front driveway as well.
Okay,
We
so
don't-
there
we-
will be a fence on the front.
Yeah, yes. We'll have
Okay,
a
because
fence.
I've heard of the reason why I ask is I've heard of other kids hiding their contraband and asking kids that walk by to, sorry, I'll pay you $5 if you'll go get me a can of chew. And so those little kids will walk by and they'll go steal it from their dads or find some way to get it. So that's why I was wondering how we're going to prevent that, because we are within a mile of an elementary school. And then my next
Yeah,
question.
it'll be vinyl, so.
It'll be vinyl on the
yeah,
front.
Vinyl as well.
Okay, and then what about, sorry, I'm hogging it all.
You take it. This is good.
Okay, runaways. I do know, have you worked in one before?
I've owned one before.
Okay. So
Okay.
when you work in one and you have the runaways and you have to call the cops, that's going to be a big financial burden on the city. So how are you going to help with that burden of the city with all the calls? Because I know in certain ones, and I'm assuming it's in this one, that if they start a fight or they run away, you immediately have to call for help. So how are you going to help take that financial burden off the city?
Well, I actually think that in a really big crisis situations, you might need to call for help. Let's just be honest. But we try to build clinical teams that actually can take care of those crises in-house. The program that they're implementing here and looking at, it's not a program that a lot of kids are going to feel like they're locked down. There are a lot of adolescent programs that are a little bit more like that. So they do always want to run. This is a program that actually will be more like, yeah, they're not going to want to go into treatment, but as they get there and they start seeing something, they actually it starts becoming okay for them. It's not like a prison or a penal situation. So rarely would you have that situation, but every good adolescent program has a runaway team, and they pretty much deal with it internally. Because they know exactly how to do it. They track them. They will they'll more than likely have a wristband on them that will track them and track them wherever they go. And it's a program, it's a wristband called Vivi Health, and there's other ones. And it literally will track everything they're doing. So if that ever happened, you know exactly where they are and what would be going on with them.
So about how far do they get? I mean, is this going to impact our schools? I mean, I don't ever want to put that elementary school on a lockdown or a lockout. They do the drills. I've been a part of their drills. But I mean, I don't ever want to put, not that I don't want to save the kids that are coming to the treatment center, because I do. I mean, I've had a kid that
Right.
struggles too.
Sure.
But I also have witnessed the kids at the elementary school, you know, with the lockdowns and the lockouts. And I'm sorry, I get them mixed up every time. But I don't want them, you know, oh, there's a runaway. Now we're on a weekly basis where we have to lock down our school or lock out our school. So how are we going to be able to get to those kids before they get that half a mile to the elementary school, I guess is my question.
So first of all, if the kids that we've dealt with, they're not going to run to the elementary school. You know where they're going to run to? The nearest highway and try to get a trucker to pull over and get them out of here. I promise you, they will want nothing to do with your little elementary school. But here's a reality. The situation in this, where this is at, we're going to involve the family involved in this. The kids are only going to want to run. It's not going to be a situation where they're going to feel locked down. That's not the case, because family's going to be very directly involved in it. And they know if they run, where are they going to go? They won't be able to come home, even if they live here locally, because the family will be involved and they know that they want them to do treatment. So reality, the elementary school, I understand your concern from living here, but that's not where they're going to go. They're going to want to get out of here as quick as they can and get down the road. But that's where good adolescent care comes in, where you have a really good clinical team and you teach a group that's all they do. So when they have a potential situation like that, they come in and they take care of this kid. So it doesn't affect the community. It doesn't affect anyone else. That's the last thing they want to do, is make sure that doesn't happen. And like I said, this kind of program, that won't happen very much anyway. It'd be a very extreme case situation if it ever did happen.
So which other ones do you own? You
I
said
don't-
you own some
I've
other
owned
ones. Or-
programs before, but I don't own any programs now.
What
I
is your
actually-
involvement going to be in this one? Are you going to be an owner in this one?
No. I'll be involved in it. Maybe I'll help them
So you're
set
like
it up.
a consultation?
Yeah, from my background here locally, I ran ACT program at Ogden Regional for 10 years. And I've been around a long time. Look at my hair, reality, 3 decades. I've been doing this for many, many years. I was a licensed counselor at one time. And I've worked with kids directly and worked with adolescents. So we've created a lot of different things. I have a consulting business now. I've had it for over 10 years. And we work with treatment centers all over the country. And we've built treatment centers all over the country. And I know that this group, I'm just going to tell you, this group, they know their stuff. They know what they're doing. They're all invested in it. They're going to do the right thing. And that's doing the right clinical work, doing the right process from A to Z. And that's one thing. I wouldn't be here otherwise. I can tell you, I would not. I didn't believe in what they're doing. You check my name, it's really good. But the reality is, these guys really do know what they do. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to bring any harm to Hooper. They just love that space because they think they actually can, with the right clinical team, can affect change in kids that are in that early stage of addiction. Because if you don't get them in that early stage, it's pretty amazing what happens to them statistically. And you guys all know that. They end up dead. They end up in a sane situation where it's a medical problem. They have medical problems so severe they have a hard time functioning, or they end up in the penal system. So that's the whole point. And these are kids, the kids that they'll have in treatment are the great kids we have out playing football out here. These are the great kids we all love and care about. That's the whole point. They're going to help these kids get their lives back together. And, maybe some of the local kids won't be involved, but they probably will do some trainings and actually some community awareness stuff that will help everybody in the community and help them understand really what our kids are subjected to. It's pretty amazing with all the internet stuff. If you really look at it, your kids, when they go to junior high, they're really basically starting high school, because everything's so accelerated now in our community. And it is frightening what they're exposed to. So this is a great opportunity to get that opportunity to help people here locally and intermountainly in intermountain states and help them get really the care that they need.
So how are you gonna pick between kids that need court-ordered therapy and just kids that are just starting? Do you guys get to choose that, or does?
Sure, we will. The state doesn't run us. The state will not run us at all. The state will literally just have a license with us. We'll actually have a screening process. We will screen the kids. We will work with local courts, though there are quite a few kids that sometimes go to juvenile court in the early stages that actually go to treatment and they do really well and they steer away from the whole process of that. So.
So there will be.
But they're not going to be awarded the state, because I think that's what you're thinking, where they're been taken away from their family. And then obviously the state does dictate that, but that's not this program's not like that at all.
So you can regulate that we don't want the court appointed.
No, we won't take them. This is not based on that at all. So that's the part you need to understand. And I think it is definition because we have state programs that are adjudicated programs that these kids are one stage away from prison. And they are in the state custody. These are not kids that are going to be in state custody.
And
These
would
are
that
kids
be-
that-
Would that be because cost wise, I imagine this facility is gonna
Yeah.
cost way more than what the state.
Right.
I imagine they have, if it's awarded to the state and they're pointing them to ordering them to go to a facility, state's covering that cost. So I imagine is what, I guess I'm asking that is what you're saying is you don't anticipate having some kind of contract with the state where you will take, court ordered.
Right. No.
It
And
would be more privately figured out with their families, like they're gonna have to pay to get
Right.
them in there, I imagine.
most of these families will have insurance. Mostly people are like all of us. They are just have a kid or a child that is needing help and they are not awarded the state just way before that. And actually they need to get some help. So,
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding on some of the paperwork that you gave us earlier. It said the target demographic is adolescents aged 13 to 18, struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, primarily referred by families, schools, juvenile justice system,
Mhm.
and healthcare providers across Utah. So a couple of things. I know Brandon had asked to make sure it's only going up to 17, but this said 13 to 18. And then where it's talking about being referred by the juvenile justice system, I guess I'm just a little bit confused because maybe I'm misunderstanding. You said that
Sure.
sometimes there won't be any from the courts, but then that makes me think there is. So I'm just
okay,
confused.
so there's two forms of juvenile court. Let me just explain. So you have the local kids that actually do small offenses, and then they have to go appear up with the juvenile judge, okay? If you've ever been in one of those services, it's really not like a legal process. It's more like a social work process that because the judge just wants them to get help. There are a lot of kids that are arrested that they're not ever going to be taken away from their families. They did a stupid thing and they end up in juvenile court. Mom and dad are very active, involved with them and care about them, but they can't believe little Jimmy did what he did. So they they walk into the juvenile court and the judge goes, well, Jimmy, reality, we can put you in little incarceration, or you can just go in and get treatment and what you really need and stop this pot usage and stop all the other stuff you're doing and get your life back together. What do you think Jimmy's going to do? He's going to want to do treatment. And he goes in, family has insurance, he's not awarded the state, he makes the decision with the family. So that's the kids. So the other side of juvenile court is the kids that have been taken away from their home. They have had at least 5 offenses that are felony based. And at that point, you get in a situation with these kids, you don't know what to do with them because it's a revolving door. And these judges, so what they do is they take them away from the family. Families oftentimes are really struggling. I know that there's a lot of these families, their kids, their mom and dads, at least one of the parents are in prison. So it's a really rough situation. So it's not even based on money. It's just, they just don't have the support. So the state takes these kids on and they put them in special programs that are nothing like this, but they try to help these kids on the other end, which is great. But this is an apple versus an orange. This is totally different process. And I appreciate you wanting clarification on that. Because they will not be taking those kind of kids. And it's not appropriate for them to take it.
So if a child is there and they're 17
Mhm.
and they turn 18, what happens while they're in there?
They actually contact the state and the state says, okay, so how long does, we'll say Jimmy, how long does Jimmy have to finish up? 2 months. Okay, go ahead and finish him up and we'll do that. If he's just starting and he's gonna turn 18, they would recommend he goes into an adult program. And because they wouldn't want him to get into his treatment and then they wouldn't be able to move him at that point.
So
How
they're-
long is the treatment?
Treatment will be based individually, so anywhere from a month up to 3 or 4 months, just depending on the circumstance.
So just to clarify, there is a possibility that there could be an 18-year-old in the same facility as a 13-year-old.
Well, I was just gonna clarify that.
Yeah.
If that's on our application, if that's a hard stop, we're willing to live with that. Yeah, so if your ordinance saying it needs to be a hard stop by 10 minutes, we'll comply with the ordinance.
You would
So,
agree to a condition.
Right.
We would-
Or
we-
the ordinance or what.
yeah, we would agree with this, like I said, the state has some flexibility, but if Flipper doesn't, we will comply with that so we can get our conditional use permit.
And one other thing, 13-year-olds are considered latency kids. So rarely is a 13-year-old really ever going to treatment. It's more 14, 15, 16 age category. So anyway, just so we make that very clear, but that's good to talk about.
Previously, you'd mentioned that there would be going to be a co-ed facility. Is that still your intention?
Yes, it would be a co-ed
How
facility.
common is that? That sounds like a recipe for disaster to me.
If it's done wrong, yeah, it is, but actually, it's actually goes really well if it's done right. And I know there'll be a large separation between the males and the females. A lot of their programming will be different. If they do some things, it'll be, guided and directed by excessive staff. And that's how they do it. But they do have to separate them because it is definitely much more productive to have it separated, separate different entities of the treatment center.
I think when you came in before, we had discussed a little bit about how many staff members you would have there during a given time. And I went back and I listened to the recording just to make sure, and it's kind of hard to hear a little bit, but my understanding is there will be no staff sleeping overnight, but you would have one staff member overnight that would be awake monitoring things. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Mike's got more extensive experience than me, so I'm gonna let you talk about it.
So, so the reality, we'll never probably have one person ever there. It's not safe. It's not safe for the kids. It's not safe for the staff. So we'll have 2 people there unless it was like we had just one patient in treatment. Otherwise, we would bring someone else in to make sure it's safe for everybody. And actually, we don't have anybody sleep because they need to be up watching these kids 24/7. And so we just do 12-hour shifts or 10-hour shifts or 8-hour shifts. I don't know how we're going to set that up, but they'll roll in just like they're working and this is what they do. So.
Can
Is-
you,
Do you know if the state, so depending on what category of license you apply for, do you happen to know if the state regulates how many people are there supervising, or would that be something that Hooper would need to, if they felt inclined to put a condition on like that, would we need to be worried about doing that as well?
No.
Or would
The
does
state will be
state-
looking at that and watching it. And when they'll come in and evaluate us again, they'll be looking at our staffing patterns, exactly who we have on. And if we don't do it correctly, it go, so they'll be watching that very closely for us as
And
well.
do they, and I can find out from them, I guess, but that's what I'm just wondering, if they
Yeah.
have, as like, if you click this type of facility, do they, and then this number of people, in there.
Yeah, we
do
call
they
it
then- Do they then, is there a matrix that then says, okay, it's 3 or it's 2
Yeah.
staff?
very good question. So we have acuity, we call it acuity census, and it's just based on who's there. And they do have that, and they do look at that really pretty specifically.
Okay.
So, yeah.
so we talked a little bit about the fence. And I think on the paperwork that you had given us, it talked about fencing the 3 acres. But when you were here before, you mentioned that the additional 57 acres, you plan to do kind of like a little nature park or something with some trails and things like that. How do you keep that secured? If you have kids out there in that large of an open area without a fence, how do you propose to keep them from leaving? How can you have good enough supervision, I guess is what I'm asking.
So when we have the kids out there, we do what it's called experiential therapy. And it's actually a form of therapy that you do like in a group setting. But we have an event that they do. And clinically, we'll have the right staff out there monitoring that. And we have a whole process we go through, literally. So one of them is they have to, there's all kinds of different exercises that they go through. And we'll have a staff, a therapist, as clinical staff, we'll have a rec therapist out there with them. And we'll have extra staff, what we would call like associate counselors that will be out there also monitoring that and making sure that that event takes place. Then everybody comes back and we're watching everybody and making sure they're well taken care of.
Would you be open to fencing that entire property?
I don't think that will be necessary, because they'll be supervised on that. And some of the other things we're thinking about doing is bringing in, horse therapy and either having horses or working with some people locally to do the horse therapy. So we're gonna need to do certain things like that just to make sure it's conducive for those type of activities, but they'll be supervised. And
Right.
We're not looking at those fencing as a containment things at that point. They're going to be supervised activities that are meant to really connect and hopefully advance their treatment.
Can you speak to what your complete security plan is? I know that is a big concern that was mentioned last time. So just top to bottom, what is your security plan completely?
So the security plan, and you can add to this, but the security plan for any adolescent treatment center that they do it right is there's cameras in the hallways. There's cameras outside. There are alarms that if they go anywhere, it alarms whoever's on immediately that something is taking place. There are wristbands that will be alerted as well. But the key, and this is, I'm not worried about that. The key is making sure your staff's rotating through and checking patients on an hour-to-hour basis. And we haven't looked into this directly, but you might want to, is that the reality is what we'll be doing with the kids is they have a merit system. So if they don't do and conform and actually stay in bed, whatever, it will prolong their treatment. And so a lot of the security issues are clinically based. But we will have staff, very adequate staff, to monitor them 24 hours a day and at night specifically, but also during the day, because it's not like we don't need to monitor them during the day as well. But there'll be associate counselors and there'll be therapists and there will be other staff that will be monitoring that. And they'll have an hourly check, but once again, you'll have someone sitting on a monitor all the time, watching everything and making sure.
Do you have numbers on the success rate of kids that go into facilities like this, long-term success rates?
So I'll just tell you one of in my own personal life. One of my stepson went through adolescent treatment 20 years ago, almost. And he did stay sober, but he started changing his behavior. And to a point enough that he got through high school, went to college, got his degree, and then stopped drinking. Just realized that, reality, even though he didn't do it all from that start, he realized what he had learned was such a productive thing. And he's been sober for years now, over 20, almost 15 years. Because he got it, he had to get it, but he had to also understand the behaviors he needed to change associated with that, which he learned in a treatment center. And I will tell you, there was a concert last week. He does not live in Utah. He flew into town and there's 7 of the kids that he went to treatment came to our house. And it was just, and they're all sober. And, I thought about, it's too bad people can't see this. And they've been friends all those years. So no, it does work. There are a lot of kids that really actually change. And on the psych side, when they come in, we're able to evaluate really what's going on. Really, are they depressed? Or do they have anxiety disorder? Do they have bipolar disorder? And you can't really monitor a kid unless you bring him really in and really look at what's going on. We'll have a clinical team that'll be able to monitor that. And if you get them on the right medication and really get them going down the right road, they totally change for the better. And that's where we've seen so many miracles and success. So putting a racial on it, I don't want to do that because it's individualized, but I will tell you, there are so many kids. So for example, like I was at Ogden Regional for years in administration, and I'm walking down the hallway one time, and this fireman comes over, and this is when I was a counselor years ago, comes over and he gives me a hug. And he goes, "You don't remember me, do you?" And he told me his name, and he was a character. I mean, this kid had no chance of getting his life back together. And he said, "What that team did for me, look at me, I'm a fireman, I'm a dad, I have 2 kids." And he was so excited to see me. And, that's what this is about, helping our kids and helping them. Fortunately, not every kid's going to have to go through this, but if the kids that do, let's get them treated when we can help them. You get them too farther down the road, you really can't help them. So anyway,
Have you ever thought, because we're talking a lot about kids that have the financial backing to go to something like this. There's obviously a lot of kids that doesn't cover. And this is a problem it doesn't matter, it doesn't recognize income. Have you ever considered doing any kind of financial assistance or grant programs so that some of these other kids could be helped with this rather than just the ones that come from affluent families?
no, we've looked at all that and we'll continue to look at that in some form. I mean, fortunately now too, insurance does pay for it, especially for kids. And there is definitely coverage for that, even with Select Health here locally. They'll pay for kids to go to treatment. And so families have that ability to do that as well. So.
How many patients are you predicting? Do you have a max that you will only allow in the facility?
So I don't know what the paperwork is. How many beds are trying to, is it 10?
Well, I think we were talking about probably around 20.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 15 or.
Yeah.
I thought it was 15 before, 15 or 16. We'll have to look. But it was,
So they'll start out small right now and then, actually hopefully it will be 20, but 10 and 10, that's pretty normal, just so you know, on a national level.
how
and
many
even with,
bedrooms
like-
are in that? I see 8 bedrooms. So and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that you had mentioned having 2 residents to a room. So if you have 20, how many residents I'm just curious, not that it necessarily makes too big of a difference. I'm just curious.
So.
And how much staff is going to be?
So I will say this, so the state has measurements exactly on the measurements of how many people you could have in a room. So we'll have to just look at that and see what that would
Okay.
look like. Actually, though, just so you know, kids do so much better together than alone. You ever get people in treatment, you don't ever want to put them alone. Because then you're going to get in trouble, because they will start looking at, how am I going to get out? How am I going to do something different? They do actually better with their peers.
How many, well, not how many, but when you came in before, you mentioned you were partnering with somebody from Salt Lake. And I know you didn't want to disclose who that was. And you've been involved in this industry for a long time, so maybe you're aware of who that partner is. Do you have any information as to like their success rate, or if they've had a lot of issues, if they've had a lot of law enforcement or police calls or anything like that?
Well, I think right now, Mike's our consultant and we're gonna use him throughout the whole process. So he's really the one guiding kind of this process for us. The other group is mainly financial backing. So we brought Mike on to bolster our team and give us expertise so we could really deliver a world-class product.
So with the other, with the partner, I think you had mentioned before that they had quite a bit of experience in this industry and that they have done a lot of these. So that's why I just wondered.
Yeah, they've done investing and stuff like that, but they're not going to be part of the active management. They're just investing in that, and they've underwritten a lot of these deals and they like them.
Okay, so with the homes that they've been involved with, you don't have any of that information as far as like how much law enforcement presence has been required or how successful those institutions have been that they've backed?
Well, I think it'd be, Mike, it would be, we're building it based on Mike's,
Right.
Mike's plan. And so that's where we So you want
So out of my treatment centers, I'll just tell you statistically, maybe 2 a year, we had situations. Otherwise, we didn't use the place. We love the place and we appreciate them and want to be good stewards with them, but reality now, and that's where you build a team where you can handle it for the most part. Because we don't want to be, we do not want to be a drain on the city in any form.
I, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so can you tell us if this is only going to be substance abuse patients, or will there be any other kinds of addictions with the residents that come in?
So generally, it is substance addiction, but there's co-occurring issues, they call it. And those co-occurring issues would be depression and would be that. But no, this is an addiction treatment center. So for chemicals.
So it's a
Yeah,
chemical
you know,
addiction.
so this is what this is based on. It's not based.
Is there a
on-
limit to which chemicals, which substances?
No, but they, you know, you don't have many 17-year-olds that are gonna come in for other forms of addiction. We just don't do that. That'd be more of a behavioral health unit that would take those on. Or like an eating disorder, we wouldn't touch that with, but we're not gonna be anything like that. So,
Can you give us any kind of a guarantee that there will not be any violent or sexual offenders that are going to be in this?
yeah, I
facility?
actually can give you a guarantee because our screening process is really intense. And if there's anything like that, we won't be taking that child.
Will you be able to find out where those are protected? Because
We-
they're,
So here's the reality, how you do adolescent care. If the parents aren't willing to be involved and be a big part of what's going on and give us the full view of this child, they're not coming into treatment. And that's a key, and that's where we've been very successful in screening. And there are kids that will definitely turn down. We're always looking for kids that have excessive anger issues, obviously. And we won't take them, and kids that are potentially suicidal, because they're the ones that are, yeah, they need help, but this is not a facility to take care of those kind of kids.
And I had a similar question. Oh, sorry. you
to
wanna-
clarify, I was gonna say, we can't guarantee that an event won't happen. I mean.
Right.
So we can't guarantee that. We can guarantee that our screening process will take that into account, everything that's of record. If it's of record that there's that proper problem, that they're not gonna be admitted. So I do want to clarify that. We can't guarantee
And that was gonna
that
be
nobody
my-
will ever escape or that there won't be an incident.
No.
I mean, we can't guarantee that.
And that was
No.
gonna be my question, I think, is like, I understand the screening, and so you do the screening, but if there was an event, what does that look like? Do you have whatever, a set standard whereby if this happens, the person's removed from the program, or how does that work?
Yeah, there'll be, there'll be a standard, and there'll be in our policy and procedures, and it'll be that. I'll just tell you though, straight up, if you had a situation like that, we'll be calling University of Utah and their psych unit called Uni, and be transferring that patient there, probably more than likely. And what I was gonna finish, you know, and I appreciate Matt saying that, we can't promise that, but we can promise you this, we'll do everything we can to screen that out as much as we can. But yeah, we can't give you 100% because that's human nature. We can't call that 100%.
so I know you mentioned you're regulated by the state. What happens if there's so many violations where you guys aren't following the guidelines or requirements? How does that work? What,
State calls you up and says, you know what, we're gonna investigate you again. And if we find that these allegations against you are correct, you know what, here's your little license, we're gonna pull it, you know, we're done. You have to shut your program down. And state of Utah, they don't mess around. That's what I love about this, because I do a lot of consulting in Texas as well. And Texas and Utah are the states, they do not play around. If you step one part over the line, they don't care. They don't care how good your records have been in the past or whatever, they'll still take action against you and shut you down.
did you mention why you moved away from owning these or directing them? Like, how long were the facilities that you had up and running? Are they still running, or?
They are actually, a lot of them are still running. I look at, you know, I just got too old. I mean, honestly, it's just too bad. So it gets too much, and had an opportunity to sell them all. Had quite a few. I had them in Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico, and had an opportunity, had a company come by and they were wanting to buy all of them. And so we decided we'd sell them as partners, but
You mentioned the one in Salt Lake just closed down. You know why that closed down? Reason
Oh.
for that?
You know, I don't know. I know the owners. I feel bad. They had quite a large group of, what we call alumni, people that have been through their treatment center and have done really well. So I don't know. It was sad they did. I really don't know what the cause is. Yeah, because I haven't been around that much, but maybe you do. But anyway, it's sad because there's a lot of kids they had locally that needed help and they provided.
So
a
they
lot of
weren't
help
shut
locally.
down by the state due to violations?
No, not at all. No, I do know that. I know the owners well enough. They did run a very tight clinical team. So anyway, I don't know what happened from there. So,
Going back to your security plan that was asked about, you'd said that if a facility is run right, it does A, B, C, D. But what about your facility? Like, what's your security plan for your facility? Not if it's done right, it does this, but what's your actual plan here?
well, so what I meant by that is we will do that. We'll do A, B, C, D. We'll actually have, the cameras will have, so the state, they're gonna want a security aspect as well. But we'll set up all the electronic components in the house as well as outside the house. We will have they'll have a monitor on them as well. And then we'll have staffing that will show how we're monitoring on an hourly basis, 24/7. And we will be doing all that, plus probably some other things as we get into those. There are mandates we're gonna have to show the state of how we're doing that and how we prove that these kids are being checked on an hourly basis. So
How long will you be involved with this facility? Are you consulting just for the first little while, or will you be involved long-term? What's your,
So I will be involved in helping them get started, but once I get started with them, I'll be in the background. I'll help them any way they need help with in the future. And a lot of times what they'll do is we'll do evaluation of how things are going and keep looking at stuff as we go and as they grow, because they will grow. And what a opportunity, not only for Utah, but for other states to have people have a place where they can get care for their kids. So,
what do you anticipate the cost being per kid that's there per month or whatever?
you know, I don't think they've come up with that yet. There are cost centers out there. We haven't come up with.
What
those
is the average
numbers.
cost?
What's that?
What is the average industry cost?
Average industry costs anywhere from $20,000 a month to $50,000 a month, kind of in that realm, you know, and
So you would
insurance.
anticipate being in that range then?
What's that?
Then you would anticipate being in that.
Well, it's a marketplace. Yeah, it would definitely be in that realm. Insurance pays that, you know, so if insurance was paying for treatment, they would pay in that realm as well. And that's what you try to be. You try to be in their realm, kind of where they would pay as well. So,
So if somebody can't afford it or doesn't have the insurance, they wouldn't be welcome in to the program, I guess. I mean, what's
Well,
the?
you know, reality, they don't, you know, we're just opening, so we don't know what that would look like in the future. If we couldn't help them locally here, we'll definitely find some other opportunities for them and help them. And there are other ways to help people as well. So,
You'd said your treatment time frame was a month to maybe 3 or 4 months.
right,
Everything I've read on addiction, especially drug addiction, suggests that it takes at least at a minimum 3 months,
goes.
if not longer. So if you're on the shorter end of that, where do the kids go after this?
So they'll go to a day treatment program more than likely, or an intensive outpatient, and they'll be there for another 3 or 4 months. And they'll they'll probably go home and start working that way. And because kids, they have to come back to their home environment and learn to live in it sober. And that's such a key factor. And programs I had, the adolescent programs, I literally fly my therapist all over wherever they lived. And they'd go meet with them once in a while and make sure the kid was doing well in their environment. So you know, we do a lot of things with that and try to get that continuity of care as they go out of there. There are some kids that they come in, they do really well. We find out that there's co-occurring issue as well, that is as big as or bigger than the addiction issue. Start treating the bipolar, and actually they don't have the addiction severity that they would have otherwise, because they finally are getting help with the right medication. And that's what this is gonna be, is just helping these kids get their life back together. And parents helping parents, because it's not easy being a parent nowadays. So I don't have to tell any of you that. You know how it is out there. It's not easy. So anyway, that's what it's about.
Okay, so, oh, go ahead.
You've given us some, examples of kids and treatment and success and stuff. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine's kid went to a center like this, for alcohol.
Mhm.
In there, he learned about fentanyl from
Peers,
And when he got out, he used that new knowledge to get a new addiction and passed away from it. So my question is, what do you believe that having treating a broad range of addictions is really the smartest route to go versus focusing on one type of addiction?
I do, and I'll tell you the only reason why, because the behaviors are all the same. And I do think though.
The
there's
behaviors
an
might be the same, but the outcomes aren't.
issue-
And the
yes and
impact
no.
isn't.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. That's sad. That's a crisis situation without a doubt. But there's still behaviors that they can, unfortunately, their peers, what we want to do is help the peers be a positive experience, but sometimes there are those cases. And I'm sorry, that's obviously someone that you cared and loved a lot, and it is sad. But the reality, to individualize drug care, you couldn't do it. It's just too hard, because there's so many different forms of drugs these kids are using. You've heard of Kratom? Have you heard of that? Do you guys as parents know what Kratom is? Does anybody know? So Kratom is an opiate, it's an amphetamine-based pill that we could all walk down right now to Maverick and get and buy. And it gives you a little high, and it actually helps you with energy. And your kids are probably taking it. And it leads to all kinds of other addiction, fentanyl addiction, all the other components. And a lot of our kids are using Kratom. So that's what I'm saying. There is so many things out there, and I'm sorry that happened. And this
I guess my
fentanyl,
point is, if there's so many different things, wouldn't there be a need for a center that specializes in those individual things?
well, I think we're both saying the same thing. So in treatment, we look at the behaviors, but say I'm using fentanyl or I'm using something else, we do key in on that. We do a lot of work around that and help them look at where their quote unquote danger parts are associated with that. The big one would be Kratom for them. When you come out and you're going there to Maverick and you buy you some chew, because we know you're still going to chew, don't buy anything else. Stay away from Kratom. And there's a big group right now trying to get all of this stuff off the market. But as parents, you need to understand what's out there for your kids. And we're struggling with that right now with adults and kids. And I absolutely cannot believe, and I'm not trying to put Maverick under the bus. I'm just saying any convenience store. It's not just, I don't want anybody, so I walk away going, oh, just Maverick sells it now. Everybody sells it. And you can get it very easily. And there's a lot of other things out there. You realize that pot's more potent than any other pot. The pot we had today, we'd have never got out of the 60s if we had that pot years ago. I mean, we'd be wearing flower, we'd have all long hair, and we'd still be in that world, because that pot is so intensified. It's the highest grade pot that can be produced. So our kids use it, and it's not like the crap we smoked. You had to smoke it 5 or 6 times to even get high. It's not like that at all. It's an instant high. And these kids get addicted really so much easier because it's so much more advanced. And that's the part that everybody needs to realize. And pot's everywhere. It's a gateway drug to everything else. And
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just was curious with the profits that you guys get off of these type of places. Do you put any of that back into the community as far as maybe lobbying or advocating for stricter policies where we don't see all this fentanyl coming across the border? Or maybe,
Oh, yeah.
like Jessica was mentioning, educating, going to schools and educating these kids on what to stay away from, and so that they don't ever go down that road.
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff like that, advocating on the back end. It's not an easy process. It's a slower process. And we've had the border situation now for what, 4 years? And that's a nightmare, as we all know. And, but it's good to know. I think the one thing that would be also a benefit for this community is there be some, maybe once a year, we'd come and we'd do a presentation here and teach the group, teach your community as parents what to look for in a troubled teen. Because it changes all the time. It does. I mean, right now in Utah, you just need to know, and I'm sorry I'm taking up too much time, but you cannot buy pure heroin in Utah. But you buy heroin that's laced and has methamphetamine in it. And so it's a combination of heroin and speed. They call it speedball. And it's not heroin. It's not pure heroin. And so a lot of these drugs too are mixed. So looking at one drug, it's a bunch of drugs. And that's what's going on in our community. And my big thing, coming as a therapist and as an administrator and owner in the past, and having two sons that are severely addicted and both now in recovery. One is an adult, one is an adolescent. The reality, I know that here's the reality. We all as parents need to wake up and realize what's going on for our kids. And we need to know about Kratom. We need to know what's out there. And that's my biggest struggle. We kind of just get caught up in life. We forget what's going on, and we judge a program maybe coming in. We don't realize that's the greatest thing that ever happened to Hooper. Reality, get something in here where we get some awareness. What's going on? Because these kids could tell you a lot. If I bring these kids in here, they would tell you stuff and they were willing to do it. Holy heavens, the stuff that they're exposed to. So giving us that opportunity is a great thing if we can do that. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to harm the community in any way, just help it and actually get some awareness out there what's going on. Because it's all over. So anyway, I digress.
One last question I wanted to ask. On the information that you submitted, you talked about academic support. Obviously, these kids are going to be pulled out of school. Will they be taught there? Or are they taken off-site to go have lessons? Or what kind of academic support happens there?
So in adolescent care, we'll have a school that they'll actually do classes either in packets, or we'll actually have teachers. We haven't got to that place yet, but they'll actually continue their schoolwork if they're local. So Davis and Weber County and Salt Lake County and all the other communities here locally are really great to work with in treatment centers. And they have people that are already assigned to that, and they just send the curriculum to the kids, and we'll make sure they'll be doing packets while they're in treatment.
So those kids from out of state, they'll be doing their school's packets, like they won't be going to Westfield, right? They'll be
No,
doing their packets
thing.
at the treatment center.
Yeah.
Okay, and then not to pick apart your plans. And I don't know as much as you do, but I have been trying to read and try to learn. Why isn't there a gym on site? I mean, like my kid, I know, I have 4 boys. All of them do better getting their energy out. And I know you're going outside, but I just don't see like a gym, like where they could go learn to lift or go learn to run on the treadmill or go, kind of get their energy out to see if that would help them. So how come there's not a gym in there?
Well, I don't know if it's around to a point where it's been decided whether there's going to be a gym or not. There'll be ways though. So I don't know whether there'll be a gym. I don't really think I think your point's really vital though, in the fact they'll have places where they'll get exercise and a lot of exercise. Because I do agree with you. They do need to exercise and they do need to work out. Whether or not we're going to have a gym in that, I have no idea. Probably we'll be doing, I know the plan too is to do a lot of outdoor activities as well.
I was just thinking where you're bringing kids from out of state and you want them to recoup. I mean, not everyone has the luxury of the outdoors like we do.
Right.
And so I do in the winter, my kids are nuts. Let's go to the gym. Let's go run it off. So I just wondered where that's such a key component in anxiety and depression, which can lead to drug and alcohols, that you don't have that in there.
you know, I think that it might be, you know, it's just early in this process, so there'll be forms for them to get that taken care of. Good question. And, you know, reality will be looking at that in the future, so. You know, I think kids, they have a lot of energy anyway, so we'll be doing a lot of things to help them get some of that off and deal with it.
Any other
Anybody else?
questions from the commission? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, so bringing it back to the commission for discussion.
Okay. Yes, that just reminded me, on my end, my suggestion is I would really love to know really specifically on the application, what license categories are being applied for. And then if there are any specialized services requested, because I would like to just follow up for your benefit, be able to find out exactly what I can from the state on what they actually do to regulate. And I feel like that would be beneficial to know if they're doing certain things versus not. One example would be the question that we brought up on, you know, how many staff members would be required. Another one might be how many individuals would be allowed in this facility based on the size that's being proposed. And I feel like they could probably answer those questions. That might help you guys. So that was one thing what I would like to have.
Yeah, I think that would be good information to have that would aid us in any decision. I also, we received some information that was emailed to the commission today from a couple of citizens who had filled out grandma requests with some local police departments talking about facilities like this and the number of police calls. And I think it's important that we have a little bit of time to go over that too and make sure that we can take that into consideration. And
Yeah, so my thought was maybe you move it to the next meeting for final disposition. You know, we don't want to keep pushing it forever by any means, but I think that to me at least would be reasonable for me to, I would have enough time to be able to look into it and get back to you before that with some input, and then you could make a decision at that meeting. So,
And that way we can look into whether they have to take kids that are appointed by the courts, you know, because I'd like to make sure that's on record too, you know, that we're not just taking kids that don't want to be there, because we all
Yeah.
know those are the disruptive and
yeah,
we don't want
so
to.
any
scare our
additional
kids.
question, because we had a whole bunch of, to be fair, we had a whole lot of new information come at you tonight too. And I
Yeah.
think that it's fair for you to be able to digest that and
Digest that, get you answers.
and then get my input
And then
from the state.
also allow us to look at different conditions that we say, hey, we want this condition placed on this conditional use.
And I think
this
that depends based on what the
Yeah.
regulations may or may not be already. So anyway, that would be my thought.
Can we put a time frame on that as far as what information you want when you get it, so that it's not 2 days before our next meeting? Then we all
Yeah.
have a chance to.
Yeah, what I would try, I mean, I'll try my best to get it to you as fast as possible. I'm gonna try to set up something as soon as I can. I would like to give you guys at least like a week or so in advance to be able to look into it.
yeah, I would definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
And not even necessarily from you, but information from them.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's the.
and I guess I should ask maybe, Mr. Lowe, do you think within a few days you might be able to get that license category info to us?
By end of next week.
Okay.
Is that fine? You guys-
Yeah, I think so. So I think if we give them 1 week, to get that to me, that would set me up with enough time to check into it, which would then allow us to have this by our next meeting.
Okay.
As long as I get that from them within a week, I think I could do that.
Okay, so if we make a motion, we can put that as part of our motion to table it with the understanding we'll get that information by the end of next week. And then as long as we have the information from the state at least a week in advance of our next planning commission meeting, so we have adequate time to actually go through it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to table the conditional use permit, for the adolescent residential treatment facility, and Torgali Hooper LLC, until our October meeting, with the Commissioner, we
expectation.
get, the information that we need from Matt Lowe and his group, given to Brandon, and we would like that by next week, within 1 week. Gives us time to look over that.
And then hopefully we can get that within,
Then I'll get information to you, we'll target be a week before your next meeting.
okay, so I have a motion from Commissioner Widdowson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Severing, all in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous and that passes. Okay. Our next item is a discussion item. This is on the allowed uses, as well as our fees and fines. So let's see here. Under the allowed uses, we have different zones in the city. Residential, commercial, industrial. I think those are the main ones that we're looking at right now. And there are different things that are allowed within each of those zones. Some of them, it depends on the density or the size of the lot. So the idea is to go through these. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at these ahead of time and see if there's anything that stands out, something that may be in a residential area that you feel like is not appropriate there or would be better suited in a commercial area. Have you guys had a chance to look at that? And let's start with the residential zones. It's under 10-2B4 in our code. Does anybody have anything on there that stands out to them that you think maybe we need to look at making a recommendation to the city council to change? We've had some things that have kind of caught us off guard that we didn't necessarily know was in our code. So this is our opportunity to look at that and be proactive. I have a few, but I would like to give you guys the opportunity. If you have anything that you.
Go ahead and read this off.
Okay, okay. So in the residential, I printed off the definitions of these things too. Some of them, because I just want to make sure, if you think it fits. In a residential area, we have a bed and breakfast establishment that would require a conditional use permit. Our definition of that is an owner occupied dwelling providing overnight accommodations and breakfast food services for no more than 10 occupants, including the owner and the owner's family. So I just wasn't sure what your thoughts were on having something like that in a residential area. It allows a conditional use permit on something like that in the R1, R75, R2, R3, and R4 zone. My thoughts were, I don't know if we want to put any kind of conditions on that, but well, yeah, I just didn't know, like, maybe in our definition, like, some of them are pretty concise. It says, if it's this, then it's not allowed. If it isn't, I don't know if there's anything that would cause any issues in a residential area by having that traffic coming in and out like that from a bed and breakfast establishment. And my thoughts were more so on the smaller subdivisions, like if you have an R3 or an R4, is that something that, I don't know, thoughts?
but,
We're not talking commercial,
no, but
residential. So
you said on the bed and breakfast, it's up to 10.
that's what it says, up to 10 occupants.
There's no way it'd fit in an R4 with the parking required, I don't think.
That's what I'm thinking. So I don't know if we want to, because we have the
Restrict it
option of
just to
saying it's
R1?
prohibited in certain zones. And so that was my thoughts. Do we want to have it where they can get a conditional use permit without having something spelled out in our code in the definition of what is allowed and isn't? Or do we just want to say, we don't recommend that we have that in like an R3 or R4?
I say we pull it out of the R3 and R4 and the ROS. We have it in the ROS too, if you look, bed and breakfast. The only ones we don't allow it in is the HDR and the PUD. So I would restrict it just to, I mean, cause if we're gonna allow 10 clients, they gotta have adequate parking, so you do either want it in a 1 acre or at least a 3/4. I don't think you wanna go, maybe go down to half, but I wouldn't. I'd strike it from. I'd only keep it in R1, 7.5, 2, and R2.
Well, if your parking's the issue, then is it better to restrict the number of vehicles and people? What if it was an 8-passenger van, or 15-passenger van?
They're all stand. And it does
Tomato,
say,
tomato.
including the owner and the owner's family. So, I mean, you have maybe it's just a couple that owns the house and they have 8 people coming and staying at different times, but a bed and breakfast, the ones I've been to, people stay in separate rooms, so you have separate cars and.
It's just not. There's too many scenarios.
Yeah. But I think we could either like maybe put something in on the definition that says up to this many vehicles or something, or we could say we don't want to allow it in those zones. Anything that has the potential of causing an issue down the road, if we can do something to avoid that up front, I think it would be better, but, and so a boarding house was right underneath that. And it's not allowed in any, and it's an establishment with individual rooms where meals and lodging are provided for with or without compensation to more than 2, but not more than 10 persons. And it does specify that a boarding house shall include, but not be limited to, a rooming house, shelter covenant, monastery, dormitory, fraternity house, sorority, or any group of individuals whose association is temporary or seasonal in nature. But then it says, hotels, motels, multifamily developments, and bed and breakfast establishments, as herein defined, shall not be considered boarding houses. So we don't allow that in any of the zones. So I just feel like it's kind of confusing because maybe I'm not understanding what the difference is. Like, any thoughts?
Keep it out of everything like it is. I'd leave it alone.
So, but allow the bed and breakfast in all of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's one for you. Fence, barbed wire or electric. It's an accessory in R1 and R7.5. It's a conditional use in R2. And then it's not allowed in R3 or R4, but it's a conditional use in an ROS. Why wouldn't we allow a fence in any zone?
I have
You know what
that
I mean?
circled too. Yeah,
I think it should be a conditional use for all 3 or all 7 of them.
the only thing I'm wondering is because it specifies barbed wire or electric wire, they're thinking, well, maybe that's more of an agricultural use, and so they allow it.
There
in
is
R1 or
right
vice
below a
versa.
fence other, okay.
And again, this is just a discussion, so we're not gonna make a motion on things tonight, but I think we need to just kind of talk about them, and then the stuff that sticks out to us, maybe come prepared at our next meeting to decide what we want to send up to the city council, if there's anything that needs to be changed. Just because we've been talking about this tonight, we do have the children's treatment facility on here, as well as the drug and alcohol treatment facility. For future reference, you know, I don't know if we want to put any stipulations. They wouldn't apply to the one we're looking at tonight, but it may be something we want to consider in the future. I know some of the different cities have some things in their ordinance that kind of regulates what they allow, you know, if we're concerned about proximity to a school or I'm trying to find where I have that.
I think we should definitely add proximity to the school.
So maybe
Restrict them for, we could have 10 people at a bed and breakfast, but we're gonna get 20 people at
Yeah.
a treatment facility.
yeah, and that's some of the other cities that we had examples of their ordinances that they said, well, you can't have more than 4 years difference in the age range of the residents in there. I think that's more of a protection, maybe like we talked about having an 18-year-old with a 13-year-old or something. I think we do have some leeway that way. But maybe if we want to look at the bed and breakfast and let's see, where did it go? Drug and alcohol treatment facility, as well as the children's treatment facility. Maybe look at those, check out some other cities' codes, see what our options are, just so we're ahead of the game. Also, I don't know, I marked this one, dangerous or protected animals. So I was trying to, what is a dangerous or protected animal? I doubt this will ever come up. Any species for which the state or federal government has established specific regulations regarding such animals, including but not limited to big cats, bears, raptors, large reptiles, and other wildlife. Not including domestic pets, but I don't know. I mean, if somebody wants to get a pet tiger, I just thought it was weird that that was on here. I don't even know if it would come up, but we've had things come up that we never probably anticipated. So I didn't know if we wanted to have that in every area. Let's see.
Why, here's a good one, the golf course and country club, we allow conditional use permit in the PUD and in a R4. How are you gonna fit a golf course in a R4?
Well, I think if the zone is R4, some of the, I think our R4 zone allows for like townhomes and things like that, but maybe somebody buys, maybe they just want to put in a golf course in that area. They're not going to put in R4 housing, but it just happens to be that it's zoned that and they want to purchase a big parcel and say, I want to put a golf course in.
Oh,
Maybe.
okay.
Skilled nursing facility, they don't allow this in the R1 zone, but there's a conditional use for every other zone except for the high density residential and the PUD. That's what I thought. So it says skilled nursing facility, an establishment that provides permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation, and that provides healthcare needs for more than 8 individuals who at a minimum require inpatient care and services for 24 or more consecutive hours for unstable chronic health problems, daily professional nursing supervision, and licensed nursing care on a 24-hour basis, and restorative rehabilitative care and assistance in meeting daily living needs. And it goes on, but I'm just wondering, like, some of these things, depending on what, like Brandon was talking about, the different licensing requirements for health and human services, all of these was kind of fall under that umbrella. So I think we need to look at them and see how they could be interpreted and make sure that we are ready for them. If that makes sense. So mark that one too. Public infrastructure facility. The term public infrastructure facility shall include but not limited to, and it gives several different things, including like a park and ride lot, water reservoir and water tank, which we've had come up recently. There's several things that are listed on there. There's a conditional use in every single thing on this, and I don't know where it's a public thing, if we have to, I don't know if we have to allow that in every single zone, or if it's something that we can have some control over. I don't know if we want a park and ride lot in the middle of a planned unit development, or I don't know. So that's one of the ones that I think maybe we should kind of look at. Residential care facility, that falls under that same umbrella. So maybe look at that one. Roadside produce stand. It's allowed as an accessory in R1, but in nothing else. And we live in Hooper. I'm just curious, like,
I don't know if that's talking about like more but even so, like, even if it was more permanent in nature, it may be something you still want to allow.
yeah, I just didn't see the issue of having something like that. Maybe if we say it can only be so big or so, you don't want to have too much traffic, but I just thought maybe living in Hooper, that's something that could apply to several of those. Yeah. Stable or riding arena, a commercial one, conditional use permit under R1, I thought maybe that could fit in R75 too, because those are still a little bit bigger lots. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that one? I don't know.
I don't know, most of them riding arenas would be like 100 by 300. So I'd probably leave it. Not allowed in a small one.
Okay. We'll leave it. So the tower or antenna structure, commercial and private. This came up recently as well. I think we need to decide if we're gonna have some things that are put in there as far as the height, the fall zone, those types of things, because to my knowledge, we don't have anything in there right now.
That would be part of our agreeing to the conditional use permit, whether it's in a acre field or a half acre, right? That would be a condition we put on the permit itself, not whether it's allowed or not. I mean, I think you could still allow a commercial tower. Maybe 10 years from now, the commercial tower is only gonna be 30 feet tall and it would fit in a half acre lot. But we'd have to make the conditions, the fall zone has to be protected or whatever.
So if, like, when you look at the accessory structures, depending on the zone that it's in or the size of the lot, it says, you know, greater than or less than or equal to 200 square feet or something if it's in, you know, an acre or whatever. I'm just wondering if we should specify on those towers, if you have a lot this size, it can't be higher than this, because the Taylor West Weaver water that just came in, I think we ran into a little bit of an issue on that because it's higher than what will be contained in that fall zone and the site. That's true. That's true. So I just didn't know if we wanna have something that says, you know, whether it's in an ordinance or something, I don't know, in the definition, that it needs to be contained, something, I don't know, just so we don't have issues in the future on it, so, okay. So that was all I had for residential. Agricultural, the only thing we have here is like an agricultural overlay, right? There was an aircraft landing field, an airport that they could do with a conditional use permit. Again, the dangerous or protected animals, explosive manufacturing or storage, sanitary landfill restricted, and the antennas and things were on that as well as the community water system. Oh. Any of those? The airport and the aircraft landing field, I mean, I don't, do we want one of those in Hooper? I don't know.
We have one.
We do?
There's a guy with a landing strip over on the north end.
Oh.
And you have more and more use of those parachute airplanes that need a little bit to land, so.
Well, and I guess there's like crop dusting and stuff like that, if they still do that, I don't know if they still.
Well, they come from the Ogden Airport, buzz my house, but.
Okay, well, so maybe, I don't know if there's anything else that stood out to anybody in there. Commercial is probably one that we should look at a little bit more closely. I questioned where it says automobile major repair. And it shows it's not in the LO or the C1, but it's permitted in C2. Like, I wasn't sure why it mattered on that, I guess, like with Whittison's. Is that industrial right in that area, or is that what it is?
Yeah.
So just keep that in the larger commercial and not in a C1 designation. I guess they can be an industrial too, but it just kind of struck me as weird that we didn't allow that in a C1, but I don't know. Bar, brew pub, or nightclub? Thoughts on if we want that in Hooper? Because as we grow, that could end up being something that comes before us, and I think we're, you know, if we're concerned about some of the things that go along with that sometimes with crime and other issues. I don't know if we want to address that now before it
Right,
becomes.
right now it's permitted in C2.
And there's a conditional use for C1. I know the current application we have with the commercial going in, they're wanting C2. IC2 zone. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I never thought we would possibly have a food cell here either, so you just don't know. Maybe something to think about before our next meeting, if you guys have thoughts or boarding house is allowed in the commercial areas, so. And then I questioned drug and alcohol treatment facility, conditional use in like an office, the LO, but it's not allowed in C1 and C2. To me, it makes more sense to have a facility like that in a commercial area than it does in a residential area, but I don't know. Thoughts?
I don't know if they want it on that main road, but I mean, I don't know if we necessarily want them in the residentials either.
I mean, I think it's important that we have a place, but I think we just have to use discretion on where that best fits in. So maybe think about that too. Farm, garden, lumber, or building supply store permitted in C2, but not allowed in C1. I was confused about that as well, like if you have
Yeah.
like a little Ace hardware store or something like that.
That don't make sense.
To me, I feel like it would make sense to have something like that, especially in this community.
So what if they send like down the street signs?
That I think we'd have to maybe put some stipulations like conditions on it. Maybe, I don't know. No, that's true. But, and maybe we need to make a distinction between a farm store, garden store. Yeah, and what classifies as that? I don't think, I tried to put the definitions in here on the ones that had them, but I don't think that had a specific definition. But I mean, we live in Hooper, so I just, to me, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, you're a lumber, speak up, dude. You're a lumber guy.
Oh, it'd be nice for the lumber guys.
Oh,
here.
sorry.
Come on.
Well, we just don't want a sawmill. How's that?
Residential care facility is on here. This one has conditional use in the LO and the C1, but not allowed in C2, which again, I'm not sure why that would be. But where it falls under that Health and Human Services, let's look at that too. Powers on that as well. And then again, that community water system. I tried to mark things that we've had come up that have been kind of controversial so that we can look at them a little bit more closely. And I think the other one is the industrial, which I don't think we have a lot. The brewery or distillery. Again, I don't know. Dangerous animals is on there again. The antenna and they have a winery on there and a water system. So maybe next time come prepared to have a discussion on what you guys think, so we can make a recommendation for the council. Any other things that stand out on there that you guys wanna bring up? No? Okay. All right, fines and fees. This is the last thing. We'll hurry through it. I printed out, I called some different cities and looked on their websites. We've had some issues where people have violated some of the code or ordinance, and we haven't really had a lot of teeth in the ordinance, or I mean, in the fines. And so we were asked to look at that and see if there are some changes we want to make. So if you look on here, Hooper's highlighted in yellow. They're not really specific in, what the violation is. They've divided it into Class B, Class C, and infraction, which I have to ask Brandon because I'm confused. When I looked up the definition, it said a violation or infringement of a law or agreement. How is that different from a class?
They're all crimes. They're just
Okay.
different levels. So you've got the very basic violation of a crime would be an infraction. Speeding ticket, stuff like that, infraction level. So that typically you're not gonna get any, well, you can't get jail time for an infraction. Max fine is lower. The state sets a max fine per level. So anyway, infraction is lowest. Then you got your Class C misdemeanors. And then you got your Class B and then Class A, and then you get into your felonies.
So in our code where it says Class B and Class C, is that referring to a misdemeanor or is that just a class of a violation, the way it's? there?
Misdemeanor.
It's a misdemeanor.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So for example, like this public nuisance stuff, is gonna be a Class B misdemeanor if you're convicted of a public nuisance or something like that, or this waste disposal or, violating our door-to-door solicitation stuff. And then down, I mean, what it's supposed to, I guess, regulate is, okay, Class B, that's to us the most serious violation of our ordinance. And then Class C would be something a little bit lesser in theory of a violation of our ordinance. So you got the building code, home occupation building license stuff, stormwater violation stuff.
And so if I'm understanding, the way it currently is with Hooper, the first time we give them a notice, there's nothing, no fine, no penalty. Second notice, $125. Third time, they get 125 plus an additional 250. And then fourth, if there's legal action, that's when that Class B misdemeanor comes into place.
Yeah, on those public nuisances. And for example, that kind of stuff is typically going to be the house that will not get the trash off of there. So old cars, beat up, junky stuff, tall weeds, and it's just a mess. And so we get a lot of calls or something about it. Well, we'll go out there and how it's set up currently and make whatever recommendations that you want as far as to change it. But the first time would be, okay, hey, clean up your place. Here's your deadline. They don't do it. And anyway, it progresses, right? All the way up to the one. And there's been a few where we've had to go take them through the justice court. And that would be once it gets up to the fourth notice, it get referred over to our office. And then we would then file the actual Class B misdemeanor criminal violation against the owner of the residence. They come in and, I mean, it's very rare. I can only think of maybe a handful of times where we've actually had to do that. So, but that's the theory, is we're stepping it up and, you know, at some point, if they just won't do it, we need to have the court get involved.
So I think one of the things that kind of spurred this was, I believe we had somebody who was working or building without a permit. They had a stop work order issued and went ahead and continued the project. And ultimately, I think they ended up getting like a $50 fine or something. like
Yeah,
that.
so if you look down on those, on that next level, the Class C, those building permits, you know, you're getting a no fine and then a $50 fine. So-
Yeah,
over months. You only had a second notice ever. So it really should have been followed up on. I mean, I look at where we're at on these two fee schedules.
on the Class B.
Class B anyways.
I think I think the fine should be higher on that Class C
I
personally.
do too on some of those things.
Cause if you have a building code violation and we come at you and the first time, the second time we hit you again, and most of them guys would reach in their pocket and say, well, here's my $50. I'm gonna keep building.
Yeah, and I think
And I think there needs to be some teeth, a little more teeth into it.
well, I mean, compared to what Plain City's building without a permit, 350, operating without a business license. Guess that's 690 if it includes alcohol. Doing business without a license, 300. West Haven, I feel like their fees are a little bit more steep. Working without a permit, 500. Building engineering violation, 1,000.
I like they're scheduling an inspection without being ready, $50.
Yeah. I
You
mean, they're on
Gonna
top
come
of
out
it.
here, you're not ready, $50.
$50.
Yeah.
I would like to see ours a little bit more concise, like, it just seems like all I could find is like public nuisance, solid waste disposal solicitation, et cetera. I don't know what that et cetera means, and it doesn't break it down like the other cities. It seems like they have it more detailed. If you do this, this is what the penalty is.
Yep.
I just think if we want people to abide by what we say, we have to have some sort of repercussion that we actually enforce. And I think it needs to be clear what that is. Syracuse is also, I mean, operating a business without a certificate of occupancy, $1,000 per day. Utility excavation without a permit, $250 per day.
But
Some
you
of
could,
these-
I'm sorry to interrupt, you could play around with that, I just thought of that, you could play around with that per day thing too. So instead of like first notice, second notice, third notice, like you were mentioning, gee, that only, sometimes we get overwhelmed, or something slips by and, 3 months go by and we're like back out there and it's only a second notice, but if we trigger it per day. And the city has wide discretion, by the way, like, it's not like we're out to try to go hammer everybody and make a bunch of money, but it just gives the city a lot of discretion, right, if you do it that way. And I will tell you from experience too, that if somebody does have an issue going on at their place, nuisance wise, and we notify them, and they're working with the city, I've never known one instance where the city is like, no, we're just out to go fine you and punish you. I mean, if they're working with the city, we're not gonna be worrying about hitting them with fines. We just want it cleaned up. This is for those people that are not willing to do that. It gives us some more discretion. So you may want to consider that per day thing.
I like that just because it kind of gives a little bit of a motivation. I need to get this taken care of as soon as possible. And I agree. I think most people would want to work with the city and it wouldn't be an issue, but you have those few that, again, that's kind of what spurred this that I think we need to address. So I don't know if you guys want to look at this and then come back at another meeting and with your suggestions. I don't want this to go too much longer but I think we need to do something with it because this has been supposed to have been on our agenda. I think April or May, we discussed this being on here and we haven't looked at either this or the allowed uses. So does that sound okay to you guys can we have that on our next agenda?
Yep.
Okay. All right, at this point, we will invite any citizen comments. If you have anything that you would like to comment on, now's the time, but something that was not on the agenda. If you'll please state your name and if you are a Hooper resident, we know you, but just for the record.
My name's Bruce Taylor. I live at 4745 West, 5100 South here in Hooper. Last month, this planning committee approved an $8 million water well and water treatment facility to be built in my backyard and in our neighborhood. This 100-foot wide water tank was presented back in 2020 and denied, was presented again last year in November and denied, again was presented this July, and last month on August 8th, after 4 years of this water tank facility being denied, this planning committee was bullied into approving this giant facility. How can this be? Just last November, this committee denied this permit when Hooper Water said they were going to hook into the current water system. This committee told them there was no sewer to hook into. Hooper Water did not know that we are all on septic tanks. They did not know where they were going to flush all of their crap. So how can this be? Let me tell you. This year, Corey Green, yes, your ex-mayor Corey Green became the chairman of the Hooper Water Board. Last year was a different year. Last year we had a different mayor. And last year we had some really good people here like Cindy Cox and Mary Simpson. Mary, who was the chairman of this committee, is no longer here. The duty of this planning committee should be to protect its citizens from big business, and you people did not do that. Next month, we will all be down here again when Smith's presents their super center for the 5th time. This time, Stuart Adams will be in control of this city. I promise you, this committee will once again be bullied and not protect its citizens, and this Smith's will be approved. You all know that this water well should have been put down at the Sinclair station, and you were bullied into putting it where Hooper Water wanted to put it rather than where the rules of the city said it should have been put. 4 years ago, Scott Christiansen told us they do anything they want in the city, and you people or the city council does not tell them what to do here. Well, here we are 5 years later, and Scott Christensen was right. Corey Green's in charge now. And this water tank was approved where it shouldn't have been.
Any additional public comment?
I'd like to comment. I know it was voted down several times, but we need to remember that as a planning commission, we gave them an opportunity to fulfill some conditions, and they met every one of those conditions. And as far as the Sinclair station, if anybody would have read the presentation, by 2030, that Sinclair station water well is going to have to be approved, or we're all run out of water, because right now we have 3 wells. Well 1 and well 2 is on 4,000. Well 3 is in West Point with brackish water that cannot be used for drinking water. And so what would you like? Would you like to boil your water the rest of your life? Or I just want to make it very clear on the record that as a planning commission, we vetted it several times, yes, and we ended up approving it because they met our conditions. Bottom line.
Thank you. I don't know if I need to bring up those items we discussed in the work meeting as far as on our, when it goes on the agenda, or if we can do that outside of this,
Yeah, you can do that.
outside, okay. All right, if there's no further public comment, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, a motion from Commissioner Greener, seconded by Commissioner Widdowson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
I didn't want, sorry.